Hello and welcome. Welcome to the New York City PowerShell virtual meetup. Tonight we have a really excellent lineup. Richard and Sean will be presenting visualizing PowerShell data with SquaredUp. Really looking forward to this. And before we get started, just a couple of things. This recording will be up on my YouTube channel, which I'll post in the chat room. Definitely head over there. You can find last year's of year of videos I've done with bringing on different kinds of guests, really interesting topics. And on that note, if you're interested in speaking or you want somebody to speak here that you'd like to hear from, drop me a line, let me know, and we can get things arranged. Also, next month, we don't have anybody set up to talk, but we'll pick up again in March, April. So definitely check out on the meetup page, keep an eye on what's going on there. And with that, let's kick off with Richard and see what they have in store for us tonight with data, dashboards, and PowerShell. Hi, Richard.
All right, thanks, Doug. I'm sharing my screen.
That was pretty cool.
That would be great. Was that my walk-on music? I didn't know you did that at this meetup. Thanks. All right, hopefully you can see my screen. So we'll be talking about visualizing PowerShell data with SquaredUp. If you know a little thing about PowerShell and comfortable using it, and you have a need to keep track of some data or get some data frequently, or probably more likely share some data with someone else, perhaps in your organization or at home, then hopefully this will be an interesting meetup presentation for you. Everything we're going to talk through is going to be a completely free tool. It's a tool we launched last year and made available to the community as a community edition, and it's a great opportunity to be hopefully talking through it today at the meetup. So thanks very much, Doug, for hosting us.
Sure.
This is a couple of introductions. My name is Richard. I'm founder and CEO at SquaredUp. I used to work at Citrix back in the day as a software engineer and architect there for their monitoring and setup tools. And I left Citrix to set up SquaredUp just 10 years ago now, because I really wanted to bring modern data visualization to the world of IT and IT operations, where typically there's a lot of data and a lot of data available, but typically really hard to get that data and get it out to other people and make sense of it. So I started SquaredUp with that premise, and we're going 10 years now. So that's me, and I want to introduce Sean as well. Sean, do you want to?
Yep, I'm the systems evangelist, I'm a tech evangelist for SquaredUp. I got confused because I worked at Purdue University as a systems engineer, and I was a customer of Rich's from his version 1 on. And yeah, so we've worked together a long time, and getting data out and visualizing it has been a big thing for us.
Let's just go back. Cool, thank you, Sean. So yeah, you used to work at Purdue. Sean, you said you're a customer of SquaredUp. Hopefully we'll sort of talk a little bit about that in terms of what you did in a second. But so Sean, we're going to make this a bit of a double act. I'm going to run the slides, not very well, because I've already moved ahead once. Sean's going to do all the difficult work of typing in PowerShell during the demos on demand, so we'll see how that goes, and I'll interrogate him as we go along. Sean, you've got a cool demo to give us out of your demo lab at home, is that right?
I do. It grew out of a need that I have. I have a birth family and I have a foster family, and I am their tech support. And so it just so happened that, having SquaredUp and having the tool allowed me to solve a personal problem. And you mentioned it earlier about Plex, because watching TV, unfortunately, has become more complicated than my parents can deal with.
All right, so we'll get into that later, and what Plex is and what you've done. And we're going to sort of finish as well just with a competition. So there's going to be a chance to win some Star Wars Lego, and we'll sort of talk about that at the end. But if you track what Sean does, hope you have a go yourself and win some Lego at the end of the meetup. So with that, let's move on. Just a quick intro to SquaredUp and the products. As I say, we've been going 10 years now. We've got 3 different products, all dashboarding on top of data you have in the Microsoft ecosystem. We've got Community Edition on the left there, plugs into a bunch of different data sources, completely free tool. And as you can see there from the quote, I think that came out of Product Hunt, which we posted to last year. Sort of it's targeting at IT pros, and here there's someone who knew how to plug in a few PowerShell scripts and use some REST APIs and pull that data out. And you can see the comparison with Grafana. So we're sort of seen as the Grafana of the enterprise IT world and the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you're familiar with Grafana, a lot of what we do should be familiar. And one of the biggest things we have is the PowerShell integration, which makes it a really nice fit with the Microsoft ecosystem. You see also we have a couple of premium editions, so an Azure edition and a SCOM edition, and that's where we plug directly into those tools and sit on top of them to offer a lot more analytics around the data you have in those tools. So with the Azure edition, we plug into the Azure resource graph, and you can browse around and drill down and get automatic dashboards for anything in Azure. And you can see there, just sort of from the quote, a lot of the value for customers comes through monitoring Azure costs. So when you start adopting Azure, the cost is a big factor there, and we can surface a lot of cost information and allow you to reduce those costs significantly. And then the SCOM edition, so if you're not familiar with SCOM, that's Microsoft's infrastructure monitoring tool, very widely used for any data center monitoring, your Windows servers, SQL monitoring, and so on. And again, we plug into that, use the SCOM object model, and give all these kind of really cool visualizations and dashboards automatically on top of your entire IT infrastructure that's being monitored by SCOM. And you can see there we've got some cool application mapping tool called Vader that allows you to visualize that data in an application context as well. So we're not going to be talking about SCOM and Azure editions at all. You can go find more information about that on our website, squaredup.com. For the rest of the meetup, we're going to focus entirely on the free product in the community edition. So as well as loving surfacing data and taking a lot of data and putting it into beautiful dashboards, we also love PowerShell. So last year, we took our SCOM product, which has been going for 10 years now. We added in PowerShell and actually took out the SCOM integration, and then released that as a free dashboarding tool that really has some PowerShell at its heart. So it's kind of the basis of the community edition. All you have to do is fire up a dashboard, paste in a bit of PowerShell like we have on the left there, choose a visualization, and you have a dashboard, and then you can share that out to anyone with a web browser, and that's just an entirely free download. So that's what we're going to be looking at today in this meetup. And before I sort of moved on any further, I thought, Sean, I can hand over to you, and you can give us a quick first look at what SquaredUp is, what sort of dashboards we can build with it, and what we can do with PowerShell, and then we'll get into your home lab setup.
All right, I'm going to share my screen 2, share. And you should now see SquaredUp, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in VS Code real quick, just to kind of set the stage. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a simple example, get event log, and then the system log, and just going to run that code. And there's the event log, which is lots of data and is usable if you want to scroll and do all that fun stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to take that simple piece of code and then throw it into SquaredUp. So SquaredUp, at its simplest, is just an IIS application. You just install, give it a couple parameters for where you want to install it, and then it just runs. And so we're just going to say new dashboard. This is the template designer, so you can kind of figure out how you want your page to lay out. But we're just going to say single tile for the moment. Configure the tile. Here are all of the default tiles that we have. So we mentioned PowerShell. We also have SQL and web content. Those are the 3 most powerful on the free edition. But I'm going to just click PowerShell. I'm going to say grid. I'm going to gloss over this kind of stuff for the moment. And I'm going to come down here to grid options just for 1 second and limit this to 20 because I don't want it flying off the page. I'm just going to paste get event log, hit apply, and it's going to go and run and then bring back all of that data in a nice little visual grid. If my lab hasn't crashed. The demo gods are not smiling on me. That's awesome.
This was the easy warm-up, Sean. We're going to get
This
into
was the warm-up. I know. It's like everything should be running. It should be just perfect. Because I have checked this and double-checked this like 1,000 times today.
Hey,
Like the entire browser has crashed.
If you need a hammer, let me know. I can bring it over.
Yeah, I just might. That's pretty, you know, I have double-checked this, triple-checked it. I have all the scripts ready.
The demo gods have hit it recently a number of speakers, so you're in good company.
Yeah.
You can try to just take 20 records in your PowerShell command. Maybe that's taking too long.
Well, I appreciate the thought, but to be honest with you, it ran fine 10 minutes ago. I mean, this should be, we should be like, it should just run. Which leads me to believe that something external has hit me. All right, we're going to jump ahead just a little bit. PowerShell, grid, and we're going to limit the results just in case. And I'll explain all of this in a moment. Yeah, that worked. So we have our get event log here. I don't know why. Something must be going on with my server that I didn't account for. But we just took our get event log. I'm piping it into a parameter called result. And then I have this switch statement here that's accepting the page time frame. And let me, that just totally screwed me up. Limit those results again. All right, there, done. Okay, yes, something's happening because I have 400 results and I shouldn't have that many. Anyway, so let me take back a step. So what was supposed to happen was putting in the get event, it would bring out the system log, and I was supposed to have like 20 events. And I could just show real quick that here's the response data from the command that it ran. So we show you the data. You can just click next. It will then break up that data in all of the different column headings. So you can see here at the bottom, we have the datum column and the machine column, which we don't care about. We can just click hide. And so just like you can do in PowerShell, where you can select the columns and then show things and hide things, we give you a visual way of doing a lot of that. And you can just quickly show the data and make it usable. We're just going to click done. And then if you need to sort the data, you can just click the column headings. It's that quick. The extra code that I added, which I was going to build as we go, is for the page time frame, which we have right here. So I can say for the last hour, and then it'll pass in the page time frame to that script and then show what's going on for my data. And then I can do last 12 hours. I'm not going to go any farther than 12 because I don't know what's going on with the event log. But that was supposed to be a rock solid, foolproof example of what's going on. And I'm going to take this data, demo gods, please. We're going to take this data and I'm going to go back into the design view and then just show same script, PowerShell tile. We're going to do a donut. I'm going to do script. This time I'm just going to paste it in as written. So again, current time frame, switch. Here's our get event log. I'm going to add a member just with the number 1 and then dump out the result. Say apply. And here's a fun donut. I'm going to then click column overrides. And then I'm going to choose event type. And here we have how many informational, how many error, and how many warning. And if I publish that and then choose last hour, you'll see that they both update and should have the same information. 3 informational, 3 informational, 12 hours. I'm going to risk it and hit 24. No, the 450. Okay, that worked. Maybe whatever was going on is done. And again, same query again. Where this time we're going to go for the bar graph. Next. And this time I'm going to do a little bit different with the result. Again, keeping that count in there. This time I'm going to do a group object and then sort it. And then I'm going to have to do column override here. Count. Oh, that actually defaulted to what I wanted. So there's all the different counts. So again, we are 24 hours, 450 results, 309 of them are the service control manager. So really quick insights into the event log, simple command, don't have to go crazy, do other things. This is like the foundation of what I'm going to go into with the Plex dashboard and how all of that worked, because the easy part is the visualization. The hard part is getting the data.
Mm-hmm. Sure, you did the add member with adding the one in there.
Yeah.
What's that doing?
That is so we can do the count.
Okay.
Because we're not counting the actual records. So if I didn't put the one in there, what would happen was here, I'll just actually show you. Sometimes it's better just to do that. If we take a look at the result data, you'll see that the index has a number. And so the donut's going to see the number and it's going to say, hey, I'm just going to summarize this. But that actually happens to be what the index is in the event log itself. So it's going to summarize that. And then so then it goes to the next numeric column. And it's going to try to summarize that. So just putting that one in there forces one per row. And then quick summarization, there's your count. Kind of like a neat little trick of dealing with your data. In fact, I learned that trick even before we used SquaredUp, just to group data with PowerShell with doing a lot of data mining.
Cool, thanks. All right, so the idea with the event logs was that was supposed to be a bulletproof example where you could just paste in the simplest possible script.
Yes.
And it worked. We'll get to some more interesting data in a minute. Once you've built a dashboard like this, how can you share it? How can you sort of get that out to other people?
Yes, that bulletproof part got me thrown. So right now, where the SquaredUp instance is running, these are the events from that particular server. So if I wanted to look at events on other servers, I could use the computer name parameter, go query all those other servers, but that does me no good if I'm the only one that has access to this. So SquaredUp has the ability, let me actually exit edit mode, click the share button, and we can actually turn on what we call open access, which creates this page that you can then share with anyone, but they're unable to get to the underlying data or the underlying scripts. And let me click preview, and that will open up in a new page. And as you can see, it has this unique URL. So this won't be available when the video is out, but if you were to go there right now, this is accessible to the world. And you can hover over this or interact with the dashboard. You can sort the data, categories, the index. Yeah, it's all interactive. It's pretty cool. And it's just that simple script. So if you have a bunch of things you need to get out and share, this is the way to do it.
Is that URL on the public internet, did you say?
It is on the public internet.
Cool. Well, maybe Sean, while I sort of switch back to some slides, maybe you can share that into the chat and people can head over and click around. Cool. All right, I'll just take back control and we'll head back to some slides just for a second. So we wanted to dive in and just get a look at SquaredUp in action. It's supposed to be a bit of a smoother demo than that, but I wanted just to give you a quick taste. But just to sort of recap what it is, and we had a question on the chat there. What exactly is SquaredUp? SquaredUp is just a front end. It's just a dashboarding tool that sits on IIS as SP.NET website. So it's a downloadable tool. Download and install it on your own Windows server, or you can deploy it via the Azure or AWS marketplace, just onto a server up in the cloud as well. And the kind of really key point, just this third point here, SquaredUp doesn't have a database. It doesn't do any data collection. It doesn't do any data storage. It's not another log collection or log analytics tool. It is just that dashboarding front end. So when Sean was just showing there that we could paste in some PowerShell, that was running on the SquaredUp server, pulling that data in on demand and showing into the dashboards. If that dashboard not being looked at, then the dashboard, the data doesn't get queried, and it's not stored anywhere. So it really is just sort of pulled in on demand. So really this is your sort of front end, this is your portal into data living in different places. What that also means is it's always real-time data. So we're not sort of collecting on a schedule or and sort of storing, we're always putting it live from the data source. And that's sort of a big difference, say, from something like Power BI or other tools like that. You know, this is always live data and really handy for operational views. So if you're using this really to get an insight into what's happening right now, rather than sort of what happened last month, this is an awesome tool. Just to recap on some of the sort of different things you can do with SquaredUp. Sean showed us there that when we went to a dashboard, we can add some new tiles, and he kind of showed there were a few tiles. So we have the PowerShell tiles. That's where you can paste in any PowerShell script. You can connect directly to a REST API, so technically any HTTP API that returns JSON. So you don't have to drop down to PowerShell if you just want to pull data out of a REST API. We have the SQL tile, and we do have an ODBC tile coming very shortly as well, so you can integrate with other databases. I'll put SQL twice. And then we have other specific integrations like Elastic, Splunk, ServiceNow, and so on. And we also have the Azure Monitor integrations that borrows a little bit from the Azure edition we have. So you can pull data down from Kusto or the Azure Monitor logs, as well as the metrics there and alerts. And we have that SCOM premium integration as well. So all of the data sources are ways of pulling data out of a particular tool or data source. Once you've got that data, it's treated the same way. So Sean was shown how you could query the event log there and get back effectively some tabular data. He could switch that out into a SQL query or a Splunk query, and it'd be the same, right? You just get that tabular data back. Once you've got that tabular data back, you can then plug that into a visualization. And Sean, what you showed us, donuts, I think bar chart and the grid. We have a few others, so you can show that in line charts, bark lines, big sort of scalar numbers showing status, and so on. So some other options there, which I think hopefully Sean you'll take us through in your demo setup on Plex. And then that last one, kind of a really key feature. The community edition has a 3 user limit for logging on and authoring the dashboards, but with open access, you can build as many dashboards as you want and share them out to unlimited number of users via this open access feature. And the open access feature is unauthenticated, so users don't have to log on to see the dashboard. So Sean showed that there was a sort of unique URL that was generated, and that can be shared with anyone, and they can have access to it. If you do need to lock it down, you can put a gateway in front of it and sort of lock it down in various ways. But the idea there is that you don't have to be logging on to the SquaredUp server just to get to that data. So a really, really great way of sharing that data out really, really easily. And we wanted to make this just as easy to get up and running with. Yeah, the install takes a few minutes. Sean showed you how quickly you can set up that dashboard, and then sharing can be done instantly. So hopefully that kind of gives you a picture of what sort of SquaredUp is and sort of what it does. What we want to do now is kind of get into a bit of a deeper example around this idea of a dashboard for Sean's Plex server. So Sean, take us through what is Plex?
So if you're not familiar with Plex, it is a home media server. And if you ever, well, being a tech person, I have a whole lot of compact discs, a whole lot of DVDs, VHS, and I've just collected media over the years, and I converted it all to digital. And so I had this massive library and I needed to share it. And I've gone through all the different variations of things like, popcorn, who was it? Netgear had a couple of sharing units for a while. Ended up switching to Plex about 2 years ago. And it's pretty much been the rock solid choice for me. The last one I used was MB, if you're familiar with that one. But anyway, so Plex. So I store all my content in Plex, and that's where I would record things for my family to watch, my foster family, my nieces, nephews, foster brothers, my birth parents, and they would all watch this content. But the problem was when something would go wrong, they would call, and then I would spend 15, 20 minutes trying to figure out what happened. And so this is where I just decided to combine work with home and come up with the idea to combine the two and come up with a dashboard. So hopefully that kind of helps set the stage.
We were talking before this meetup, Sean and I were sort of, I've got the suspicion that Plex is for people who do like a little bit of IT support, right? You actually have to run it on a server, but you run the software on your own server, and you have to monitor the server health and so on. So you're kind of a sucker if you're running this, you know, that you do need to do that,
Yes.
that IT support.
Yes, so Plex does have like a cloud component, but you're absolutely right. I had to run this. I am running this on a home server, and it's doing its thing. So, and it's in the corner, and I don't watch it. But the certain services have to run, has to be accessible to the internet. You know, it has to have access to the hard drive. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of maintenance once it's set up. Got to just make sure it's working.
So you secretly like a little bit of IT support to keep you in practice. All right, and mentioned there on the slides as a really cool API as well. So you can get out not just information about what's in the catalog, but actually monitoring information about how it's performing, right?
Yes, they have an API. They are starting to document it. It had everything I could imagine, but it's not all fully documented. And so the community stepped in, and they have a lot of the documentation for the API, but I had to kind of use the web browser tools to kind of figure things out. So actually, if you could switch to the next slide,
yeah,
that actually leads right into this. What happened, what I realized when I was doing this is I needed to communicate to my family what the server was doing. I wanted to know how it was performing, and I needed to know what it had. And what I realized was that the data was in 2 different places. And so looking at this diagram, the SquaredUp server hosted the open access dashboard, but the Plex media server had the performance, so the CPU memory, had the services for the Plex media library, but it didn't have the content, not the content, but the content library. That was all in the Plex cloud. So the cloud had, what the libraries were, what the content was, how it was arranged, the images, how often it was watched, who the admins were, who my friends were that were allowed to access it. And so going through the APIs, I realized, oh, I'm going to have to query both places. And I also needed to query the Windows operating system to find out how the services were behaving. So it was like 3 different data sources that I had to deal with. And so this is kind of how that all works at a high level.
And we're obviously choosing just like a simple sort of home project example here, just to kind of make it easy to look at what SquaredUp is doing. But a question came in about how this is different from dashboarding that you can do in another monitoring tool, and you touched on a kind of key difference there, which is the ability to integrate with multiple different tools and data sources and bring them into just one place, right? So you set up SquaredUp perhaps on top of one or more monitoring tools. We had a question about Splunk there as well. So within your work environment and obviously within our sort of customer environments, they'll run Splunk alongside maybe SCOM and maybe some monitoring up in Azure Monitor, or maybe an APM tool like New Relic or AppDynamics, maybe a log analytics tool like Datadog might have SolarWinds in the picture, right? And so kind of one of the challenges is putting all that data into one place, into one set of dashboards, as well as just making that easy to build and share those dashboards. So it really is all about that sort of dashboarding and sharing of the data from tools that may already have dashboards. And you mentioned, I think Plex does have a dashboard in itself, for example.
So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because Plex does have a dashboard that does present a lot of these metrics. In fact, that I used their dashboard, went to the web tools to look at the API calls they were using and just scrape them out and use them myself. Why didn't I go with that going forward? That right there is probably the linchpin of this whole setup. My birth parents and my foster parents are not technical people, and they don't deal with logins and changing passwords and apps on their phones. They don't have any of that. They have flip phones. It's just annoying. So what I did here was, because SquaredUp has the open access, is I should also back up a step. I also have them on Fire TV sticks. So their remotes have 5 buttons. They're all configured the way I want them to be configured. So I installed an app on their Fire TV that lets them open up a web page, and that web page is the open access dashboard for Plex. So if they want to see what's going on, they could go click, 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 enter, and then up comes the dashboard, and there's all the information. No logins. I don't have to worry about security. They don't have to have these apps, none of that. Just simple, here's the data. They are, if you really want to get technical, their own little NOCs, network operation centers. Mom across the street, she has her own little NOC. My foster mom across the street, she's got her own little NOC. Done. And then when they see those things go red, that's when they can call me. And they can diagnose from that screen real quick and just say, Sean, the server's not running. It looks like the service is stopped. And I can just go fix it, and I don't have to deal with the 30 minutes of explanations.
All right. Should we get stuck in?
Sure. Fingers crossed, demo gods don't curse me again. All right. Share my screen. Screen 2.
So what did you use to pull out all that together? What, all in PowerShell or?
It's all PowerShell.
Sweet.
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show 3 examples. So that diagram that we had, let me bring that diagram back up. Can you see the diagram?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk through those 3 examples and how it all went together and how I put it all together, and then we'll show the finished product. So the very first thing I needed to do was get the services that were supporting Plex off of the Plex media server. And let me go back to here. We're just going to do new dashboard and Plex services. Okay, so we're just going to do one tile. And again, since I wanted to know if the service was up or down, I decided to use the PowerShell status block. I'm going to do default for the run as account, and we're going to get the profiles in a little bit, but I'm not going to use it right now. And then script, and then I'm going to paste in a script, and then I'll explain what it does and how it works and what it shows. All right, so the very first things here at the top are things that are important for me. And import module and set defaults, all it really does is create these little variables for the password and username so that I'm not sharing it over a webinar. That way my Plex stays secure. So we can kind of ignore that. I have some functions that I like to use in a lot of my scripts. This first one is just new credential, where I can pass in the username and password and it creates the PS credentials. And then I have this function right here called new process, which is how I'm going to present the data to SquaredUp so I can see if it's up or down. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. And then, so we create my credentials. So we pass in my credentials, creating the object. What I do here and system. And so I've now created 5 objects, and their default is not running and showing critical. So then I invoke a command where I'm going to go to the computer that's hosting the Plex media server, pass my credentials, and then I go get their running processes. And I want any process that has Plex in it, and I want to know system. And the cool part with system is if I reboot the server, the next time it comes up, it'll actually show when the server was rebooted, and it has like health. So if I stop the Plex services and then restart them, they'll go yellow for a period of time to say I just recently restarted it, which is key because if, let's say, mom decides she wanted to start a movie and it's not working, she goes to the dashboard, oh, it was just restarted, I'll give it 5 minutes, and then we're good to go. So then I come through here and I set the state because I don't have any monitoring data. I'm just looking to see if the service exists and what's going on. So I loop through each of the different services, check their start time, check their current clock time, and I say if it's less than 15 minutes, make it warning, recently restarted. Otherwise, it's healthy and it doesn't need a note. And then just show all of that data. So as soon as I click apply, we now have 5 services right here at the bottom. I'm going to click next, just so you can see when I look at the response data, that if I was to run this in VS Code, this is what I would see. And then if I click next, I can link to something if I need to. I can actually control the label. So again, this is outside of the script. I can then click this little mustache syntax, and these are the other pieces of information that were sent along with that object. So I can go to town on a whole lot of other data elements if I wanted to, and then have it show up on screen. And then I can do a custom sublabel if I wanted, like start time. Like this. And there we go. And then I can sort them either by their health state, or I can group it by ascending, descending. I'm just going to default for now. And then I can say how many blocks I want on page. And we didn't really talk about it when we were looking at all the different features, but there's a beautiful designer here that if I just click done, I can add columns on either side. And then I can come back into this, say blocks. I want 2 blocks and say done. And so I can arrange this script on the page, however, wherever I want it. And then let's say I don't want it there, I can just drag it over there and it just adapts to how I want it. So this was the first piece of the information, the first. And let me bring the picture back up. So this was these services. So great. Now we know if the Plex is running. So we're going to take a step back and say, okay, now we need to find out what else is going on. And so what I decided to do there was I kept with the status blocks. Let me delete that real quick. Drag this over. Do a new tile, PowerShell, status block. Default, next. So this time, you're going to see some similar information here. I'm going to build it as we go. So again, here's my credentials. Here's my Plex username and password. So in order to query Plex, looking at the documentation, I had to pass token, GUID, product, and version, and it could be free form. So I just created a GUID. This token path I'll explain in just a minute. Product, it could be anything I wanted. I just called it SquaredUp so that I knew what was going on, because if you log into Plex, it'll actually show that I've connected via the API, and what it is what I put there, and knowing that it was SquaredUp is pretty handy. Credential, and then again, the process function. And then here's where it gets really crazy. Okay. So credentials. Oh, what did I grab? Okay, there's more. I didn't strip out enough. All right, so the token. Each time I connect to Plex, I have to ask for a token. So I authenticate, I get a token, I then use the token, and then I can save the token. The next time I refresh, I use the token, and then I use the token to check with Plex, and I ask, is the token valid? And it says yes or no, and if it is still valid, I continue to use it. If it's not valid, I then have to re-authenticate. And then when I re-authenticate, I get a new token, and then I save that. And so that's how I deal with it here. I save it to a file, and then I create some headers because it's now a web API, and we can go into this in depth if we want, but I just want to show, here's the body for the API request, here's the header. I then check if it's valid. If it's invalid, I write out some data. And then if it's invalid, I request a new token. And then if it was invalid, I then write out that token back to the file, and then I just continue to go. And then I stop there. And so I wanted to know what was playing. So I query the Plex server, bring back the data, and then I want to format it. And that's what all of this fun stuff here is. And they bring back a lot of information. So I'm going to click, well, here before we do that, I'm going to show the response data because there's a lot of data that comes back to this. And I pretty much loop through all of the response data. It returns what's playing. It returns the images, the library, how many times it's been played. And then I just go through all of it. But if nothing's being played, nothing comes back. So I got a big fat error most of the time because there was nothing playing. So then I had to account for that null condition. And so I create that temporary object and just say it's healthy. So for this now playing, if nothing's playing, health is green. If somebody's watching something, health is red. If something's paused, health is yellow. And then I shoot that out to the screen for SquaredUp to deal with it. So if I click apply, we have nothing currently being played. So I have my iPad here. I have Plex. I'm going to start a movie. Click Zoom. Make sure the volume's not too loud. There. All right. So we have to give it just a second. I'm going to click done. I'm going to click publish. I'm going to click refresh. All right. It hasn't caught up yet. We need
Sure. While we're waiting for that,
yeah.
Just the left-hand tile was using essentially sort of remote PowerShell against the server itself, just using the standard get process commandlet.
Yes.
Whereas on the right-hand side, you're hitting the Plex API on the Plex server in your home environment, and you're using the invoke web request is the sort of essential command there, right? So using invoke web request to actually hit the web API.
Yes. Yes. And the third piece, which we're going to get to as soon as this shows that it's so now it's playing. So let me show this, and then we'll explain the third one, because the third one is like, oh boy, because the third one is a combination of both of these. So here was the script. Here was all the data. Here's the response data. And so we can see the highlighter 2, the quickening is playing, who's the user. Here's the image API. Here's an image. And so if I go to the label, I can click custom, and actually let's do sublabel, click custom, and we'll say Sean, who's watching, and then we'll put status like that. So you can see real quick, it's pretty cool because I can show who's watching, what's going on, and I can start to format how I want to present that. And we're gonna get tricky in a minute. All right, so now I know. So now I can query the Plex API. I can query the services, but I want to know what the CPU and memory are, so I can figure out what's going on. Now I can query the Windows operating system, WMI, but that just tells me what the service is doing. It doesn't really tell me more of what's going on. Plex actually keeps track of CPU and memory within the app and stores it in its own little database. But how do I get to it? So what I found was the server itself has an API. So not only am I querying the cloud, I have to query the server where Plex is running and its API. But the problem with that was that, oh, let me actually fix this real quick. Blocks and make this one block. The problem with querying the Plex media server that's locally hosted was that I needed to know the certificate UUID, which was only in the registry. So we're gonna use, here we go, this code, scroll to the top. Okay, again, same import module, username, here's all the same fun information, credentials. So I query the server, first to get the UUID, and then I build the REST API URL from the UUID that I had in the registry to then query Plex and its port to then get to its metadata. Again, same token, great. So all that code was reused and everything we had there. So the hard part then was to go find what the actual REST call was, which the community documented, and then format that so that it gave me what I wanted. And let me go to PowerShell, line graph, next script. I picked the wrong tile. We're just going to click apply, and boom, there's my data. And we're going to take a look at the response data, and here's all of the CPU data that comes back. And I can just throw that into a nice line graph. So the hardest part was figuring out all of the REST API pieces. And we'll get to the finished product in a minute. But so what I ended up doing was I ended up bundling all the functions, all of the calls, and then I used a feature of SquaredUp called the profile, the PowerShell profile, which let me show that. Let me publish this real quick. Go to System, PowerShell, and Plex. And again, here's those username, password, all that stuff that I pretty much have to recycle for every tile. So if I go back to that dashboard I just created, and then click the graph, and then I change it to the profile I have, I can then click script, and I can scroll down and delete all of that common stuff, click apply. And so now here's this simple script there. It's all on screen, and there's my graph. I can go to the now playing. So change that to the Plex profile script.
Sure, this might be a good time to ask a question that's come in just around how often the scripts are running. Is the data cached anywhere? Is it reusing PowerShell instances? What's going on behind the scenes?
Yes. So by default, it runs every 60 seconds, and we can click the environment variable here. So right now, I'm running as the default user, and I'm using the PowerShell profile. But if I want to create other accounts, I can do that here. So if I want to embed the credentials and it's all secure, I can do that. But if I click advanced, I can then choose to run Windows PowerShell, which is Windows PowerShell 5.1, or I can click PowerShell.NET Core. And if you have 7.1 or .2 installed, it will use that environment. And then here you can say how often you want that to run. And what we'll do is we'll just cache those results, and it will run on the schedule that you want. So in this particular case, if let's say I want the CPU to run every 30 minutes, I just put 30 minutes there. And then it'll run once every 30 minutes, which is pretty handy when you have APIs that are rate limited. So I am working with well, let me just show it real quick. I was working with the weather the other day, and I wanted to create a tile that showed the weather at the top of the page. This little weather icon is rate limited, and I'm allowed like 600 calls a month or something for the free account. So what I ended up doing was weather can be updated once an hour. And so I just changed it, or once every half hour. So I just changed it so it runs every half hour, and it only queries when it's being viewed, and it'll run once every 30 minutes, no matter who's looking at it. So that's pretty handy, particularly if you're using open access. So that's how I control that. And what else is there related to that? Because that's big.
That's great. And just quickly on the run as, so the default would mean that it runs as the identity of whatever the IES app pool.
Yes. Yes.
or you can set up several ones. And there's a question about sort of what permissions do you need, and so the idea there is where you can run as any user you want, and ideally they'll only have read-only permissions, right? So when you're doing server details, for example, you just use
in fact, when I because this was a demo, I just set it up so that it worked. But when I was actually testing it, I ran it with an actual user. And so this was the user that I created that had login permissions. And I wanted this, problem aside earlier, I wanted this demo to be rock solid. So I made sure all the permissions worked for this. But yeah, this should actually run as the dashboard server has permission to log into the Plex media server. And so it will pass those credentials. So if I click publish real quick and go up to system, we can go to PowerShell, and here are the run as accounts, and you can click and then add a new run as account. And then these
the questions are getting better and better, Sean. So the next one, just I guess related, say, to that weather status tile. If you are pulling the data, but wanting to show it maybe in sort of 3 different tiles, visualizing it in different ways, is that going to hit the APIs 3 different times, or can you sort of share data across the tiles? Could you do that with a profile, sort of put the query in a profile, and would it be reused?
It would, no, it would run 3 different times, because each profile runs beginning to end. But if you needed to rate limit that, there is a trick to do that by creating a run space in PowerShell and then just refer to that run space. It's a trick. If you're not familiar with it, Jeffrey Snover tweeted it out like 2 or 3 months ago. It's a neat trick where you create a little place to store things and then you can refer to them from other workspaces. So there is a way to do that.
All right, should we get to see the final article? Otherwise,
yes. Yeah. So I'm just going to click Plex status, and then this is the admin view of all of that data. And yeah, so I still have the as you can see, I can still have that movie playing, and you can see that there's the actual album art there, 1 session running. And since it's the only session running, I can actually, let me actually pause this. And so now the video is paused, and it should. All right, it's going to take a second to catch up. That's the fun part about when I worked in infrastructure. My directors would always say, I want immediate results. And I would always say, no, you get near real-time results, particularly when you're dealing with a web API. So that will refresh in a second, but here's the bandwidth, here's the CPU, the RAM. I was able to pull out users. Here are the services, and you can look to see what was recently played. I pull out the album arts. Again, same scripts. All of these things are just formatted slightly different, and then you can play with them. And then I do some, in addition to pulling out the data, because SquaredUp exists after the data is pulled, but it knows about how the object is formatted, you can deal with the labels in some really unique ways. So here on this label, I'm using a table and I'm breaking it up. So this Nancy Drew image is in one cell, and then I have another cell next to it where I have there's the property image, here's the property title, and then I change the font and I throw how many plays, and then underneath it was the user count. So you can format the data after it comes out. And if you just want to add new data, you click the mustache syntax, and here's all the other data that's available. So if I wanted to look at like the art library, or where the image API came from, or if I wanted an external link to IMDb, I can add that because I know what the IMDb code is and make those clickable. But since I'm putting this on a television, I didn't worry about any of that. So the whole point here was the family can just come in, they can look at everything and just see what was going on. So you can see that that's paused. And the reason why I like paused is I noticed that my foster brother, Ben, he never stops anything. He always hits pause, and it stays paused for like 3 days, and then he'll come back and finish it. In any case, so here, the 8 libraries, I can scroll down. Here's another view of the different libraries, who was watching what by library. So just some interesting stats.
So Sean, I think we've got someone who probably has a Plex at home as well, because they were asking what plan you're on. Do you get the APIs with any plan?
You get, yeah, the API, they do not, that is actually an excellent question, because some vendors do require you to have a particular plan. No, in Plex's case, the APIs are available to anyone. You just have to have an account with them. So if you run it all local and you don't have any of the cloud stuff, then no, you don't get it. But as long as you have the Plex cloud piece of it, yeah, it works fine. In fact, I'm adapting this dashboard for a coworker who runs his Plex on a NAS, and I want to see how that works and pull data out that way.
So a couple of questions. That we do more than just Plex dashboards, right? We should make that clear. SquaredUp was not set up with vision to make Plex dashboards. What else do we, what else can you do with this? And if someone wanted this dashboard, where can they get it?
All right, so you have a couple points there. So if you wanted this dashboard, so let's just, since this is my home lab, I leave the getting started and the next steps there. Getting started just happens to be the very first page, and it shows you some examples. But if you click next steps, it takes you to the next steps page, which has all of our documentation, how to create your first dashboard. And then right here is different examples. And so you mentioned other dashboards, VMware Status, which I'll show in a second, SolarWinds, Kubernetes, Azure Uptime Robot. If you click Browse All, it will take you to that website, which is squareup.com, and then dashboard-gallery. And here you can actually look at them by either PowerShell. I tend to do a lot of SQL dashboards. And so, yep, these are all mine except for Automator. And then you can sort by visualization if you want to do grid, scalar, sparkline, whatnot. It's pretty cool. And we have a lot more that we're going to try to post. But to just show another dashboard, let me click VMware here. This was the VMware demo that we put together when we first did PowerShell. And this is like stupid simple. It literally, all I had to do was set up a run as account in my profile, which is VMware Power CLI. Let me go over here, system, open new tab, PowerShell, VMware, Power CLI. So I'm bringing in, this is the credentials again, so that I hide those. I set the CLI configuration because I want to make sure that certificates is ignored. And then I just check which server I'm connecting to. I set up some page default timeframes so I can change the page, and that's it. On this actual page, the script itself literally is just get VM host. And then I do some things to like make it pretty. Other than that, it just boom, there it is. And I think host by version is even simpler. Yeah, that's all that is. And so we can see, we could take, now granted, we have a small VMware environment, but I do have a coworker at Purdue University that they do run a VMware environment. So they did take the code and then did play with it. They broke the dashboard up into multiple pieces. So when they look at host by version, they had, I think, 64 hosts. And they liked this because as they're doing rolling upgrades, they could keep accounts of what was updated or not, and they could show management really quick. So it was pretty cool. And again, just different ways of showing data really simply. Cool.
Awesome, Sean. Thank you so much. That's great. There's maybe a few more questions, but we'll get to them at the end if we have some time. Nice stuff. I hope everyone's sort of enjoyed the show there, both with the PowerShell and also the visuals you get out of it. I think it's interesting. You sort of said at the beginning, visualization is the easy bit. It's sort of getting the data and then converting that data into the right format that takes the PowerShell foo to get right. All right, I'll sort of wrap up just with a few things there that Sean's mentioned. So fast, easy dashboarding for PowerShell plus a bunch of other data sources. So Sean mentioned SQL there as another sort of popular use of the dashboarding. All you need is a Windows server. That's the only prereq is a Windows server, and you can install SquaredUp on top of it. use it for personal projects like Sean has, but also probably more likely at work. I think probably Sean, you've given us a flavor of that. You know, if you can put a PowerShell script together, you can put it into the dashboard and share that out just really, really easily. Kind of, there's no other need or sort of log on by any viewer who's using those dashboards. There's the URL for the dashboard gallery, so SquaredUp.com/dashboard gallery. We also have a community Q&A site with loads of questions. Probably, so I think there's over 3,000 users in our community asking questions about SCORM, Azure, PowerShell, and dashboarding in general. So loads of more inspiration there. We have those paid for editions with Azure and SCORM, which are very different products because you can actually drill down into the server. So for example, that VMware case there, you could drill down into one of those hosts and see a bunch more information on how it's connected. But otherwise, everything Sean's shown you is just in our free edition, community edition. So just head over to squaredup.com/download and you can just choose the community edition there and get going and do everything that Sean's done. Just saw a question there about a desktop edition. Does SquaredUp now run on Windows desktop, Sean? We looked at that, didn't we?
No, it doesn't yet. We still need IIS.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
IIS Express. Well, look, I think we looked at it the other day, didn't we? We'll look at whether that's running on desktop. But at the moment, we just support the Windows server side.
Yeah.
And then just to finish, if you've been inspired by what Sean's done, we are giving away some Star Wars Lego. So when we go to real events, which we haven't done in a long time, but when we do go to real events, we normally take with us a massive stack of Lego Star Wars. We have done for years and then really enjoyed giving it away. So we figured this would be a great opportunity to do the same and give some Lego away. So build your own PowerShell dashboard, taking inspiration of what Sean's done there. So download the free product, have a play, build something, send a screenshot over to dashboard@squaredup.com or tweet us at SquaredUp. And we'll select a winner. So best dashboard is going to win a Lego X-Wing, and we'll also got a bunch of little microfighter Lego boxes as well. So we'll send those out to some runners up and some other good efforts, and we'll do that all in the post. So get those in. If you can send us something within the next few weeks, we'll announce a winner in a month's time. I think February 20th. We won't wait for the next PowerShell meetup in March. So we've got a month to do that, and we'll announce the winner. And hopefully Doug can share that in the next meetup. In terms of what to build, the judges will be looking for like technical challenge, whether it's kind of really awesome stuff like Sean's shown us, actual practical usefulness, or just sheer sort of creativity and fun. And we've had loads of examples. We've done this last year when we launched and got some really kind of cool examples of using dashboards both sort of for personal use and work use, and we did it internally as well.
Yep. Rachel from HR, she worked Mars chocolates, yes, and she did a chocolate dashboard internally.
All right, so and you can always head over to the gallery to get some inspiration. So yeah, give it a try, and we'll be giving away some cool Lego. So that was all we had to share. We've got a final slide there just saying thank you very much for hanging around and checking out SquaredUp. I hope you still enjoyed that, and we'll pick up any questions.
Hey, that was a fantastic demo. Great recovery from the demo gods as well. I think there was a couple of questions in the Pushpendra asked about the ability to add audio files for critical alerts.
Yeah, I saw the other question there about notifications. So, Sean, do you want to pick that up?
It doesn't matter. Audio comes up a lot, and right at the moment, no. I actually got it to work. It is possible to do it, but it all depends on the use case, and that's when it falls down. So out of the box, no, SquaredUp does not have audio, but if you want it to ring a bell when an alert happens, you write the script, check the service. If it goes red, fire off an event on the local machine, and wherever that machine is will ring a bell. So it is possible to do it, and I got it to work. But if you're in a NOC and you have these wall monitors, where do you want the sound to come out? That's when it falls down, because people have, I'd have to know more about that particular use case to see if that would work.
Yeah, and there's a similar question, Sean, about notifications, whether you can send notifications in like the status examples, for example.
So, okay, so SquaredUp is a dashboarding tool. It's not necessarily a monitoring tool. So that's a key distinction because we're not storing any data. So when I actually show statuses, I'm creating them in the dashboard. So if I need to like trigger off something else, I just add in the necessary PowerShell code to like fire off an email or fire off a Slack integration or whatever I need to do in the PowerShell. And so SquaredUp will just run all of those things. And so you can have it be your communication tool if you want it to be. And so that is a good use case. There's nothing in box that does it for you. You just have to add the script. So having PowerShell, the world is your oyster. And then kind of froze there. Did I lose you?
Nope, we're all good.
Okay, cool.
So can you script a dashboard, or does it have to do all? You have to do it all through the UI.
What do you mean script the dashboard? You mean
So
like?
If I wanted to create,
we didn't even talk. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Good question, dude. You're like right up my alley.
I was gonna say the same about you. So continue.
So let me find my dashboard here. Okay, so here's 3 tiles. I'm gonna
Sure, we can't see your screen.
Yeah, you're good point. Yes, and okay, so you should be able to see SquaredUp again.
We still see the slides. Richard's still sharing.
It's because
there you go.
There we go. Because I didn't click. I got too excited. Okay, so here is my SquaredUp instance. I'm just gonna click just a new dashboard. I'm gonna click configure tile. I'm gonna just say 1 tile. I'm gonna throw a scalar value out there and just click done. So 3 clicks, things are finished. But if I click the JSON button over here, here is the JSON that describes that entire dashboard.
Nice.
So if I actually go to, let me discard that, and then I come up here to that first demo dashboard that I built, and I click the edit button, click the JSON button, highlight that JSON code, click the little X, click new dashboard, click the JSON button there, highlight and paste, click apply, boom, there's that dashboard. Now, that was the hard way of doing it. We have a copy button up here that'll create another dashboard. But I wanted to show that this is the entire page. And then if I click a particular tile, here is the JSON for that tile. So I can edit, how things look. When I want to script it, I would then just drop down to the file system, write out my JSON and write it to a specific location. SquaredUp will see it and then display it.
Awesome. So that's a little bit how Grafana works. And I've been hearing the term dashboards as code.
Yes.
Awesome.
So all of the dashboards are JSON files on the server. And actually, a lot of customers also use source control for the dashboards as well, right? So if you want to sort of change your dashboard, you can put it into source control first and do a build that deploys it out to.
Perfect.
Yeah, and this is a great opportunity with, like, if you create, like, I have my own little SquaredUp instance, and let's say Rich has his SquaredUp instance, and we're going to monitor the same thing. I can just send him the JSON for that particular tile. He can plug it in, or I can send him the whole page. We can export it. There's a whole lot of way of sharing data, which is just awesome.
Very cool.
And there's a question about whether you can take a snapshot of the dashboard, which obviously you can do just using a screenshot tool. We don't have that built in, but I thought you might want to touch on the Excel export there as well.
Yes, actually, I was just going to touch on the export. So your timing was like fortuitous. We have an export button, which will export the dashboard in. So if you want to share it, we do have an Excel export. So if you click export to Excel, it will write out a file and it will open on another screen. So hang on 1 second. All of the data that it wrote out for those 3 tiles, 3 different pages. So you can interact with that data. And since this is a dashboarding technology, there's nothing that we have that will do the screenshot, but I did write a tool that I put out on our GitHub forum that will let you take screenshots of the entire page on a schedule and write them to a directory. So there is a way to do that. Yeah, I kind of glossed over that the Excel export is really cool, because if you're sharing data with other people and need to then manipulate it further, they can then just bring it into Excel and then, you know, do what they want with it. And that is awfully light. Cool. I cannot see the chat window when I'm sharing. So.
That's fine. We'll feed you the questions. Sean,
Okay.
I know you capture everything that happens in your mind on OneNote. So someone's asked that link to the Jeffrey Snover post on Run Spaces. I'm sure you've got it in a OneNote somewhere. So when you dig that out, that'd be great if you can share that.
Yeah, let me. I'll have to probably look for it.
Yeah, because I'm sure you've got it there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. If you saw my OneNote, it's kind of crazy.
And while you're doing that, just as a question about whether SquaredUp has its own REST API. So no, the JSON syntax is pretty straightforward, but you can create a dashboard, use the JSON from that dashboard as a template, for example, and then sort of parameterize some values and use that to generate the JSON. So if you want to actually create new dashboards, for example, you can just drop them straight onto the file system in the right place, and SquaredUp will pick that up. So we don't have a dedicated API to do dashboard management. You just do it straight into the file system. Yeah,
and coming from, I mentioned it earlier, since I was a customer for a long time, that's actually how I worked with SquaredUp, is just with the file system. And that was great because when we did backups, I would just have my backup admin back up the server and then back up the specific directory. And then that became my change control. And that worked out really, really well. I didn't need to have anything special. So now that I'm part of the company, if it was to come up, I don't know that it would be worthwhile. I mean, you might think you want it, but file system is really the way to go.
All right, that's great. So there, some folks were, you're going to talk a little bit about Splunk.
Yeah, if you guys want, I can show it too.
Right.
Yeah, because yeah, when Rich offered the job to me, I was like, yes, because I love this tool. Splunk is really awesome, and I've worked with it at the institutions. Let me see if I can find a Splunk example. Snippets. Splunk. You better load. Time frame is null. We just moved our infrastructure to a new VMware ESX landscape, and I don't know that I updated this. Let me see if the preview lab is working. Perfect, that's working at least. So the Splunk tiles are pretty slick. When you're in Splunk, so you define the provider so you can log into it. And then you have your base URL. And then if you need to post or get the information, and then if you pass whatever header or whatever your search criteria happens to be. And so in this particular case, we decided to pass, instead of going through the URL, we're passing it through the header. And that gives us the ability to say we want JSON, it's a one shot, earliest time is 60 minutes, latest time would be now, and then here's the search criteria. And I think, no, if we go to post, no, there's we pass back the search criteria. So as you're in Splunk, if you save your searches, you can, SquaredUp will see them and bring them in for you. So it becomes a point and click exercise once you have the query written in Splunk. And then here's the data that comes back. We show how it looks, so you could pick the correct key path, and then we allow you to then map it. How do you want it to show? How do you want to sort? How do you want to label it? And what colors you want? If you want just blue, or do you want color?
And Sean, you're showing there the web API. So you're hitting the Splunk web API directly. We actually have a dedicated Splunk tile, which makes it a lot easier
Yeah,
in the query? Is that a
configure and then Splunk. Let's just do grid, provider. Here we go. Thank you, Rich. It's the when you're doing the demo, you're like in the zone. So yeah, errors in the last 24 hours. So you click errors and then that will come back or should come back. Now, since this is our,
so we have the dedicated Splunk tile that has all the search editor and stuff all sort of tied in to makes it really easy. You could drop down to the web API tile to hit the Splunk REST APIs, or you could use PowerShell and kind of hit Splunk if you wanted to do something with the data on top of the query language.
and actually that's a key point, because sometimes when you're working with the data, you get lost in how many ways of doing it. You have the Splunk tile, web API tile, you can do PowerShell. Oh, do I need to use SQL? And sometimes, I have this Swiss Army knife and I pick one and it just becomes difficult. And it's like, if you just take a step back and like, oh, maybe SQL is the better tool here, or, oh, the web API would be the better way to do this. And SquaredUp gives you that ability to just kind of pick the better tool, better knife to cut the data up with. But this is the way I would do it, because I always liked writing my queries directly in the Splunk bar, and then you do your page time frame. The cool part is once the data comes back, you then have that grid columns, and so you can then show or hide whatever you would like, or modify by clicking edit. You can then work with the data that has been returned. So if you don't want to deal with formatting all the data in Splunk, just return it to SquaredUp and then do it in the visualization layer, which is pretty cool. And grid options is nice because you again have that mustache syntax. So let's say this CD, or let's say this index time is important for some reason. Let's not actually do that. Let's do host. So let's say host will take you someplace else. Let's say that's a real email address. I'm going to click done. When I hover over now, you'll notice at the very bottom left, really, really tiny, it'll say http test.com ID equals. So you can then jump out to that other location and drill down further in the other tool. So you can start with SquaredUp as your first place single pane of glass phrase, and then jump to the other systems to continue to drill down if you want to. Which is really handy, particularly when you're sharing data broadly and not everyone knows where to go all the time. So if a database has one set of data, a web API has a different set of data, and they are sourced from different places, you can create the URL to go to those places, but show them in one place. So hopefully that answered the Splunk question, or we can drill into it more, but yeah, didn't prepare for that. So recording it and showing it might not be smart.
All right. So I think that's the end of the questions. Richard, Sean, I want to thank you. Great demo, great looking product. I'm looking forward to playing with the community edition and win myself some Lego. So everybody else, any closing words that you like to add?
I do have one thing. You mentioned the Lego and doing your own thing. We have a community forum, and if you start playing, just post and we'll help.
Okay. Please,
by all means. I mean, so we're always interested in a good story.
Okay.
Just let us know.
Sounds good. Yep, we can join the community. And do you have a Discord channel, or just curious?
I don't think we have a Discord.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have since I have my screens shared, if I could type SquaredUp.com, and then Community Answers is our community, and then you could go to the PowerShell forum and then post, questions, and we help out as we can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, spending time with us. Everybody, thanks for being here, and we'll see you at the next meetup.
Thanks very much, Doug.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye for now. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.